Here are two different accounts of the Pied Piper of Hamelin. First is a version by the Brothers Grimm. This version is called The Children of Hamelin. In the year 1284, a mysterious man appeared in Hamelin. He was wearing a coat of many-coloured bright cloth, for which reason he was called the Pied Piper. He claimed to be a rat catcher, and he promised that, for a certain sum, he would rid the city of all mice and rats. The citizens struck a deal, promising him a certain price. The rat catcher then took a small fife from his pocket and began to blow on it. Rats and mice immediately came from every house and gathered around him. When he thought that he had them all, he led them to the river Weser, where he pulled up his clothes and walked into the water. The animals all followed him, fell in, and drowned. Now that the citizens had been freed of their plague, they regretted having promised so much money, and, using all kinds of excuses, they refused to pay him. Finally, he went away, bitter and angry. He returned on June 26th, St. John's and St. Paul's Day, early in the morning at 7 o'clock. Others say it was noon. Now dressed in a hunter's costume, with a dreadful look on his face, and wearing a strange red hat. He sounded his fife in the streets, but this time it wasn't rats and mice that came to him, but rather children, a great number of boys and girls from the 4th year on. Among them was the mayor's grown daughter. The swarm followed him, and he led them into a mountain, where he disappeared with them. All of this was seen by a babysitter who, carrying a child in her arms, had followed them from a distance, but had then turned around and carried the news back to the town. The anxious parents ran in droves to the town gates, seeking their children. The mothers cried out and sobbed pitifully. Within the hour, messages were sent out everywhere by water and by land, inquiring if the children, or any of them, had been seen, but it was all for naught. In total, 130 were lost. 2, as some say, had lagged behind and come back. One of them was blind and the other mute. The blind one was not able to point out the place, but was able to tell how they had followed the piper. The mute one was able to point out the place, although he or she had heard nothing. One little boy in shirt sleeves had gone along with the others, but had turned back to fetch his jacket, and thus escaped the tragedy, for when he had returned, the others had already disappeared into a cave within a hill. This cave is still there. Until the middle of the 18th century, and probably still today, the street through which the children were led out to the town gate was called the Bungalows, drumless, soundless, quiet street, because no dancing or music was allowed there. Indeed, when a bridal procession on its way to church crossed this street, the musicians would have to stop playing. The mountain near Hamelin, where the children disappeared, is called Poppenberg. 2 stone monuments in the form of crosses have been erected there, one on the left side and one on the right. Some say that the children were led into a cave, and that they came out again in Transylvania. The citizens of Hamelin recorded this event in their town register, and they came to date all their proclamations according to the years and days since the loss of their children. According to Seyfried II, the 22nd rather than the 26th of June was entered into the town register. The following lines were inscribed on the town hall. In the year 1284, after the birth of Christ, from Hamelin were led away 130 children born at this place, led away by a piper into a mountain. And on the new gate was inscribed, Centum te denos cum magnus ab urbi polus, Duxet antion annis CCLXXII condita porta fuit. The Latin translated to mean, this gate was built 272 years after the magician led the 130 children from the city. In the year 1572, the mayor had the story portrayed in the church windows. The accompanying inscription has become largely illegible. In addition, a coin was minted in memory of the event. The alternative method or the alternative story that follows this same Pied Piper is as follows. Once upon a time, long, long ago, there was a small German town called Hamelin. Hamelin was overrun with rats, so overrun that there were hundreds more rats than people. Rats in every shape, size, and colour were everywhere. Whatever the town folks tried to do to get rid of them only succeeded in making the problem worse. It got so bad that the mayor of Hamelin had a town meeting about the rat infestation. Someone suggested cats would eat the rats, so the mayor told everyone to starve their cats. But cats were no match for the sheer volume of rats in the town, and soon became afraid of them. Desperate, the mayor then promised 10 bags of gold to anyone who was able to rid Hamelin of their huge rat population. People came from far and wide as word spread of this generous bounty. Many tried in vain to rid the town of rats to get those bags of gold, but still no one could help the troubled town. Then one day a stranger in colourful clothes and a hat with a single feather in it came to Hamelin. He introduced himself as the Pied Piper, telling the townsfolk he would rid their town of rats in exchange for the 10 bags of gold. Sceptical but hopeful, along with the mayor, the townsfolk readily agreed. The Pied Piper went to the centre of the town, with everyone following, and took out his pipe. An unusual but melodic tune started coming from it as he played. Some townsfolk started laughing, expecting the rats to come out dancing, but what they saw next quickly silenced them. You see, as the Pied Piper played his pipe, more and more rats appeared. Dozens and dozens of them came from all over the town, clambering over one another to see and hear him play. The Pied Piper began walking through Hamelin, with more and more rats following him as he played his pipe. On, and further still, he walked through the streets of Hamelin, continuously playing this unusual tune that only the rats seemed to respond to. More and more followed him until there were no rats left in Hamelin, but the Pied Piper didn't stop. He carried on walking, playing the same tune, with the rats rushing to keep up with him. Suddenly he got to a river, the River Weser, and stopped walking, but the rats didn't. Climbing over one another, they jumped into the river and drowned, finally freeing Hamelin from the rats that had plagued them. When the Pied Piper returned to the town to collect his reward, the mayor and the townsfolk refused to pay him. Enraged at their greed and the fact that they went back on their promise, he immediately left the town, deciding to return to teach them a lesson when they least expected it. When nightfall came and everyone was asleep, the Pied Piper returned to Hamelin. He stood in the middle of the town centre and took his pipe, and this time playing a different tune, a soft, enchanting one, so as not to awaken the adults. Almost instantaneously, children began to approach him, captivated by the music playing on his pipe. It was as if the children were hypnotized and couldn't be stopped, because they all followed the Pied Piper once he started walking. He stopped at the entrance of a cave, just outside of Hamelin, but the children carried on, walking inside. Once they were all in there, he put a huge rock in front of the opening to stop them from leaving. Then he waited. But what the Pied Piper did not know was that not all the children made it to the cave. One boy hurt his ankle along the way and got left behind. As soon as the music stopped, the boy was no longer enchanted and struggled back to the village to raise the alarm. The people of Hamelin were distraught at losing their children and ashamed of breaking their promise. They were also very scared of the Pied Piper, so they rushed to this cave and begged forgiveness. They even promised to pay him 20 bags of gold to get all of their children back unharmed. The Pied Piper agreed, returning their children to them. The townsfolk vowed never to break their promises or be greedy any more. The Pied Piper got his reward and was never seen again by the people of Hamelin, but sometimes, when all is still and quiet, it's said that his pipe's dulcet melodies can still be heard in the distance.